Welcome back to Book Break. The concept of this video is simple. I'm just going to tell you about some brilliant books. I have got lined up here 9 amazing new literary fiction books to tell you about. These are all new this year, or in one case, newly translated into English this year, and I just think you're going to love them all. Trust by Hernan Diaz is one of the books on this year's Booker Prize long list, so you're going to be seeing this book everywhere this year, and for good reason. If you look at the cover here, you can see that the cover is actually made up of a stack of other books, which is your first clue into the format that this novel is going to take. So the book starts out presenting a novel about a very, very wealthy couple living in 1920s New York who have risen to the absolute top of this world of extreme wealth. Already, this is a great book. It's a fabulous setting. It raises all these moral questions about how did they get to the top and at what cost. But that is just part 1 of Trust. So that novel is then revealed to be a fictional novel within the world of the book, but it's based on a real couple. But this is just telling one version of their lives. So we then get to read an unfinished autobiography written by the husband of that couple. We get to read a memoir written by a woman hired to be his biographer. And finally, we get to read some diary entries from the wife. Each version of the story is slightly different and paints a different picture of these characters, leaving you trying to figure out who you can trust, hence the name of the book. It's such a fun format, trying to peel back all the different layers of these characters' lives. This is metafiction at its finest, and such a great setting in New York and such amazing characters that you spend the whole book trying to piece together. Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies by Maddie Mortimer is another book on that Booker Prize long list, and this one is written in a really experimental lyrical style. You can see just from looking at the words on the page how differently this book is written. For example, look at this. The words actually make shapes on the page, so it's really experimental. The story is about a woman who has been diagnosed with cancer, and we jump back and forth between her present day life when she lives with her husband and her daughter, her past life, and also sections written from the point of view of the cancer inside her. And so the book is really all about how bodies carry all of the events of our lives, whether that's memories or whether that's an illness. It's a very sad, very personal book. A lot of this is drawn from the author's own experience of her mother's illness, and it's written in this absolutely heartbreaking and yet very funny way. Talking of funny, Disorientation by Elaine Shea Chu is a satire that is very, very funny, very, very readable, and very impressive in the breadth of everything that gets satirized in here. This author spares nothing and no one. You will find yourself being satirized in here. The storyline is about a PhD student in her late 20s who is just finishing up her dissertation when she stumbles across a strange clue about the author that she's reading about. And this leads her on a kind of literary treasure hunt, and along the way she's forced to confront a lot of truths about herself, about her relationships with the people around her, and about the institutions that she works within. And everything is getting made fun of here. But it's not just fun and games. This book will make you feel angry at the world. It will make you want to change things. The sign of an incredible book. Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel is a literary time travel novel. What could be better than that? And this book is so clever. We jump quite quickly through time, starting in 1912, jumping forward to present day roughly, then to 100 years in the future, to 300 years in the future. And there is one recurring character who we meet in every single one of these timelines. And so finally we meet him in his home time, which is hundreds of years into the future, living on the moon. There we discover how and why he became a time traveller, and we then go back through all of the time zones where we first met him. The way it all comes together is just so clever and so satisfying, but really, really easy to read, even if you're not a regular sci-fi reader. I'm not, and I loved this book. It's just completely magnetic storytelling and plays in really interesting ways with the idea of time, with the idea of parallel universes. It's a book I have not stopped thinking about. Briefly a Delicious Life by Nell Stevens also does something really interesting with its storytelling because this book is narrated by a ghost. On the surface, the book is about the summer that Chopin spent in Mallorca with his lover George Sand and her 2 children. It was this completely disastrous summer, and that is based on truth. But whether or not you know anything about the true story, it doesn't matter. This book will bring it to life for you. So that's just one part of the story, is watching the relationships between these people, watching them being othered by the rest of the villagers, seeing where this disastrous summer is going to build to. But the narrator is the ghost of a teenage girl who has been dead for centuries and has been haunting this monastery. And we get flashbacks to her own life, her own story of how she ended up here. She's a great narrator because she can go inside different people's minds, she can read their past, she can read their futures, and so we get to learn a lot about everyone in this story. She's also completely in love and in lust with George Sand. She says herself that when she was alive, she lived in this world of beautiful men, and it's only after she died that she has started to realise the beauty of women, and she is very lusty. Fittingly to the title, it's a very delicious book. It's one of those books that I just found myself wanting to be reading rather than doing anything else. All the Lovers in the Night by Mieko Kawakami is a very introspective book, a very sad book. This is about a woman living in Tokyo. She lives alone, she works as a freelance proofreader, and she is completely unable really to create any meaningful connections with the people around her. The highlight of her year is every Christmas Eve when she goes to look at the lights and they make her feel alive in some way. But all of this changes when she has a chance encounter with a man who inspires her to see the world in a new light. And we watch as her life starts to change for the better, but we also see the truths of her past and the pain from her past start to resurface, and that still haunts her. Kawakami writes really well about the inner lives of women and girls and puts them in this wider context of society and how society conditions women and girls to feel and to behave, and you find yourself really rooting for this character in this book, hoping that she will find the strength to bring her walls down. Haven by Emma Donoghue is an incredibly atmospheric novel. This is set on an island in the middle of nowhere. This is extreme isolation. Emma Donoghue is great at bringing places to life. She has written contemporary fiction, historical fiction, and I always love reading about these settings. This is something brand new. This book is set in Ireland in the 7th century, so we're going way back into history. It's about a religious scholar and a priest who has a dream that tells him to leave the sinful world behind. And so he sets off with 2 other monks to leave the world behind and to set up a new religious colony on this island. So the book is about their survival in this place of extreme isolation, and the complete isolation is what gives this book its intensity. Emma Donoghue is this amazingly versatile writer. I've made a whole video dedicated to talking through her backlist, so I will link to that below so you can go and check it out. And I mentioned that her books often contain themes of gender and sexuality. You'll find that in here. They often contain these amazing settings. Of course, you will find that in here. But each time you pick up an Emma Donoghue book, it is something brand new, and this is no exception. Eden by Jim Crace. Absolutely beautiful book. Look at this. This is set in the Garden of Eden, but not as you know it. In this Eden, the inhabitants are aware of the world outside. They live this eternal, beautiful, unblemished life, but outside there is suffering, there is poverty, there is death. And at the beginning of the book, the inhabitants are summoned to see the body of a bird who had strayed beyond the walls. This is a warning that something is not right in Eden and perhaps another fall is coming. A woman has escaped and there are 2 people in Eden that would do anything to find her, would risk anything to bring her back. So this is a love story. It's also a story about freedom. And finally, a book that came out right at the beginning of this year, and if you haven't picked it up yet, this is your sign to do so, To Paradise by Hanya Yanagihara. If you're looking for a book to get completely lost in and sucked into, this is the book for you. It is very long and very excellent. The book is divided into 3 sections. The first section is set in an alternate version of 1890s America. We meet these characters living in New York, which is part of the free states. So Americans are allowed to love whoever they want, to marry whoever they want. And we follow this love story taking place in this alternate history. The middle section is set in 1990s America, and we meet whole new characters, but all with the same names as in the first section. And so it's quite fun trying to piece together who you think each one is meant to represent, or are they supposed to be totally brand new? And then the third section, which is the biggest section, jumps forward in time to 2093 into a world that has been plagued by multiple pandemics and is now governed by totalitarian rule. And again, we meet whole new characters but with the same names, and there is some hint in this section of how these 3 timelines might connect together. This is not anything like A Little Life. It is not anything like anything you've read before, really. It's a book that somehow manages to be this long, and yet you're not quite ready for it to finish because you go so deep into the lives of all of these characters. You care about them all so deeply in all of their various manifestations. So those are my recommendations of just 9 absolutely brilliant new literary fiction books I think you'll adore. I would love to know your recommendations, so do put them in the comments below. And I'll link here to a playlist of all of our other literary fiction recommendations videos. And I'll see you next time!